All right, so now we have the pattern pieces prepared. Now we're going to go back to our directions and find how we're going to lay this out. The standard fold for a 45-inch wide fabric is the way you see it on the table here, folded in half lengthwise with the two salvages together. There is another fold here for some other sizes, and if you look through here, some of the other pieces you have even more unusual folds. So you would need to follow what the fold here is. To determine what layout you're going to need to know three things. You're going to need to know what view you're making, because here's the jumper, here's the jacket. You need to know what view you're making. You need to know what size you're making. This is the size 10. This is the size 12 through 24. And you also need to know the width of your fabric. Here's the third piece of information you need to know, whether your fabric is 44, 45, or whether your fabric is 58 or 60 inches wide. So you need to choose the layout that is appropriate for your particular fabric size and pattern. So I have the size 10. I have 45 inches wide, and I'm doing the pants. So this is the layout that I will be using. And here they show me that the two salvages are folded together. The fold is on one long end, and the salvages are on the other. Before we fold the fabric that way, we want to make sure that the fabric is on grain. Many times, the fabric has been stretched or warped a bit in production or finishing, and so we want to get it back on grain. There are three ways to check to see if the fabric is on grain. One of them is to, in a cotton, cut in a little bit and tear the fabric, which results in obviously a straight edge because it's torn along the weft grain. Or if it's a little heavier fabric, you could choose to snip in a bit, snip past the salvage, and pull a thread, which we take a thread. Sorry, I'm going to tear it a little bit. And pull it. Now this one works a lot better by tearing it because it's so tightly woven, but in some loosely woven fabrics, which I will demonstrate in class, you can see that I could pull a thread and then pull it until it breaks, and then I will have a missing thread here, which I would cut on, so then again it would be on grain. And the other way to determine a straight edge, an on grain edge, would be if it had a woven in line that I could see, like a plaid or a heavy linen that had a thread that I could follow, cutting it without pulling it. So first you're going to straighten out both ends, and then you're going to lay them in this typical standard fold with the salvage edges together, the finished lengthwise salvage edges together, and you're going to smooth those out and see if they match up into a square line here. If they don't, we have some remedies for putting them on grain, which would mean we would do some stretching and pulling to get them back on grain. And we'll demonstrate that in class as well. But this is preparation that you would do for every piece of fabric that you use for every project. You would somehow make sure that the fabric is on grain. The next thing you need to know is your fabric have a directional design? Now, this doesn't have like a bucky or a W where you could definitely see if it was upside down or right side up, but it still is fairly directional in that like this big rock here is shaded down at the bottom and is not, mirrored on the other edge. So I would still, for this and any fabric, if you have enough space, you would want to lay them out with nap, meaning that all the pattern pieces are going to be going the same direction. So the top is always the top coming down to the bottom. I'm not going to have a top of a piece going this way and the top of a piece going this way. And then when they're sewn together, you could see that they aren't exactly the same direction. So always try to do with nap. And I believe that these layouts, no matter which layout you choose, they are all with nap, meaning the top is always in the same direction. So for these pants patterns, you don't have to worry about it because they do have the with nap layout. So let's say we're looking here and I'm going to fold, my fabric is straightened out, it's good to go. I'm going to fold it the way the pattern suggests here. I'm going to talk about this layout just for a minute because many of you will need this layout. There's other ways you can lay it out if you buy extra fabric, but if you buy exactly the amount of fabric that they recommend, you will need to use this layout because otherwise you may not get it out of there. So for this layout, it's going to look strange because obviously they did it for pants. For the sizes other than 10, they want you to lay it out with the salvages together on both sides. So the salvages are together on both sides, and now the fold is on the crosswise instead of the lengthwise. So you would very carefully and neatly fold this, and then you could do a snip here on this fold, cut it, and then tear it, because we don't want to have, if we leave it like this and cut it out, then I'm going to have the top of the pant on this side is going to have the high point of the rock, and on the other side it's going to have the low point of the rock. So we need to cut them in half and flip one over so that they both have the same direction. All right, so that's for the other sizes. Let's go back to this layout here for number 10, and whether it's laid out that way or this way, how to get the pattern piece on grain is the same. Now we have the fabric is now on grain, but what we want to check now, or we want to make sure that the actual pattern piece is on grain. And some of you might say, well, why bother with that? Well, if you've ever had something that after you washed it, twists in the wash, or a t-shirt that the side seam is all wonky hanging one way, it was the fabric not cut on grain. And so the lengthwise fabric, the lengthwise of the fabric, which is the strongest, which is the one that doesn't stretch as much, you want to do lengthwise, and that will keep the garment hanging straighter and won't give you a hem that's wobbly because it won't stretch lengthwise.